Hello everybody, my name is Matthew Foster and I have a deck tech for you today on behalf of the board state. Our deck tech today is going to be revolving around the commander Neyith of the Dire Hunt. She was released in Jumpstart and it is card draw on a Gruul commander. Has a lot of people excited, myself included. It says, whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, you may draw a card. And its other ability is at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 in a green or red. If you do, double target creature's power until the end of turn. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. So basically we can force out blocks that our opponents don't want to make, and we can make our things huge and draw cards off of it. She's 2 and a green to cast as a 3/3. She can target herself with ability, so we're not really going to be focusing too much on the Voltron style of things here, but it's, you know, it could always be useful to kill somebody with commander damage with the commander, if you must. Breaking up the deck into categories today, where it's not a top tier deck. It's not designed to be a competitive CEDH deck. It's just designed to be a strong, resilient sort of card draw engine in Gruul. Our main focus of the deck is going to be revolving around gods, because they're indestructible, they're naturally good fighters, and we want to kind of slap them down, have enough devotion for them, and start beating people to death with indestructible big gods. That's pretty much the game plan. But to do such things, we're going to have to run through our ramp package first. So our ramp package is primarily enchantments and creatures over artifacts. The reason why is because enchantments and creatures contribute to the devotion for our gods so that they become creatures. So starting off, we have a Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl as our 2 enchantment ramp. Utopia Sprawl lets us pick a color when it comes in. Wild Growth is just flat out an extra green on the land when you tap it. They're pretty self-explanatory. The 2 artifacts that we do have is Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. They're very cheap, efficient sort of mana ramp cards. Arcane Signet fixes colors in case we were having a real bad time. But that's about it. We've only got the 2. Moving on to the creatures though. Creatures is where you want to be, because creatures can also fight. You know, I'd much rather have a Llanowar Elf late game than a Soul Ring late game, because I can potentially draw off a Llanowar Elf, forcing it to fight something. So we'll run through that. We have a little elf package of Priest of Titania, Elvish Mystic, Arbor Elf, Llanowar Elf, and Selvala and Rada. So this is our elf package for ramp. Now, strictly speaking, Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Arbor Elf, they're all tap for mana. Priest of Titania, they all tap for mana. Now, Selvala does tap for mana, and Rada does not. Selvala is a card draw / ramp, because we're going to have big creatures. She can potentially be one of the best ramp cards in the deck, because she can tap for a lot. And Rada lets us play extra land, well, not extra lands, but lands off the top of our library, so that we can draw into more and more threats. It's also a mana sink, which is nothing to sniff at. When we give, if we can pay 4 green and a red, and Rada gets +X until the end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. If we've got a lot of lands and we sink 6 mana into this, and we sink 9 mana with our commander into it as well, it potentially goes from a 3/3 to unbelievably huge. So it's an important part of the deck. I'd like to think that it will do well here. But yeah, we're mainly focused on the creatures ramp, because like I said before, they can fight as opposed to artifacts and such cannot. Outside of creature ramp, there is 2 cards here that are extra. There is Bear Umbra and Crop Rotation. Crop Rotation is here, pretty self-explanatory. Let's just go find utility lands if we have them. You know, if we need to strip mine somebody or Ghost Quarter. I've got Gaia's Cradle in this list. You don't have to have that. You can pretty much swap that out for anything, because it's pretty pricey, but I've put it in. Ancient Tombs to help you ramp. You know, Castle Garden Brick does the same sort of stuff. All of this sort of stuff we will cover in the lands later. Crop Rotation is just a good solid go and find a utility land. Bear Umbra is here because it's basically gives our creatures +2/+2, and we can sink mana. If we have our commander out, and we want to make a creature that we have bloody huge, and we want to smash somebody, it's going to cost us 3 mana to be able to with the trigger on Neyith to double something's power. So if we have Bear Umbra, we pay the 3 mana, we swing with Bear Umbra. If that creature has trample, well, in fact, I should probably read out Bear Umbra for you. Bear Umbra states, enchanted creature gets +2/+2 whenever this creature attacks, untap all lands you control. Now, we don't actually have to deal damage for this trigger to happen, we just get to attack. So we basically get a free activation off our commander, as long as we're happy with playing things in our second main with Bear Umbra on a creature. And it's also got Totem Armor, which is quite good because not all of our creatures are indestructible. This is not an indestructible tribal, it's just got a heavy god theme in it. Going on to the gods, we have 8 total. We're going to start from Xenagos. Xenagos is probably the strongest one that we have available to us. It's a good commander in its own right. A lot of people, have a Gruul Stompy deck built around this commander. It reads, as long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, Xenagos isn't a creature. But it also reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is that creature's power. Now, if we have both our commander out and Xenagos, we can stack the triggers where we pay 3 with Neyith to double something's power. And then, say it's just a 5/5 and we double it to 10. And then Xenagos hits the stack as well. And then that creature gets +10/+10 in both stat lines. So we can, between Xenagos and Neyith, we can make things bloody massive. So this card's a really good one to have out. It's a 6/5 indestructible. All these gods have pretty damn good stat lines and are indestructible. Our next one is a perfect example, which is Ronus the Indomitable. It's a 3-mana 5/5 with Death Touch and indestructible. Death Touch is sneakily good in this deck, forcing things to be blocked and killing stuff. 9 times out of 10 we're going to kill stuff just because our stats are higher than theirs. But, Death Touch is always a nice little cherry on the cake. Cherry on top. I don't know. Either, whatever that expression is. Ronus says it's a 5/5 for 3, sorry. It can't attack and block unless you control another creature of power 4 or greater. It has a mana sink for 2 and a green. Another target creature gets +2/+0 and trample. Giving things trample in this deck is fantastic because not everything has trample, but we have a lot of power and we kind of want to abuse that fact. This one does not need any devotion to turn on, so it just sits on the table. It's just a 5/5. It's legendary. It's a really good target for our fight cards. And yeah, it's just a solid little 3-drop. We've got Perforos, God of the Forge, and Perforos, Bronze Blooded. Now, both Perforoses are in here. The most recent one is the Theros one. The reason why that is here is because it gives all our creatures haste. And it's also a 7/6. Its stat line is massive, it's huge, and it's got a sneak attack type effect where you can pay 2 and a red and put any red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. We have to sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, but every now and then we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we can take an advantageous block or something along the lines, or we need to swing in for that extra bit for lethal. It comes in handy. Giving everything haste is fantastic. We have the other original Perforos, which is it's a 6/5, sorry. Indestructible, need a devotion of 5. So, sorry, yeah, I should have mentioned that. All devotion gods need 5 if they're monocolored, or 7 if they're 2 colors. But we'll get to that. This Perforos reads, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. And it's also got a mana sink of 2 and a green. Creatures you control get +1/+0 to the end of turn. Now, we are not a tokens deck. We will not be flooding the board and getting a lot of value off of this. But it is a 4-drop god, and, it's a really good stat line. So I'm happy with that. We've got both Nylea the Keen-Eyed and Nylea God of the Hunt. Nylea God of the Hunt is the original one. And she basically gives us static trample. All other creatures you control have trample is what she reads. And she also has a mana sink of 3 and a green. Target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. She's here because we have a lot more green than red. So we can reach our devotion criteria with her much easier than some of the other 4 gods. And she's a 6/6. Normally that's good enough to start eating things at the table. So that's fine. Plus just giving everything flat out trample. She does not have trample herself. She says other creatures you control have trample, but still, fantastic. And the most recent Nylea Keen-Eyed, she is kind of like, I don't know if you'd call it ramp, but she says creature spells you cast cast cost 1 less to cast. So she just makes everything cheaper. She's more efficient. She comes down on 4. Boom, just makes everything more efficient. She's also a mana sink to let us find threats. She has 2 and a green. Reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put that into your hand. Otherwise, you may put it into your graveyard. 9 times out of 10, we don't want to be putting stuff in our graveyard. We do have a little bit of recursion, but it's not too much. Moving on to the last 2 gods, we have Klothys, god of destiny, and Hazoret the fervent. I can never say that right. Hazoret the fervent. So Klothys is a new one from Theros. It's just a powerhouse. It's a 4/5 for 3. Comes in, starts exiling stuff out of people's graveyards. It gives us a little bit of life, which is hard to come by in Gruul. It can also ramp us, because it says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a land card, add green or red. Otherwise, you gain to your life, and Klothys deals 2 damage to each opponent. So it's 6 total, which is really good. And we have Hazoret, which is an indestructible 5/4 for 4. It doesn't need devotion, so we've got both Hazoret and Ronus, because we can just put them down and they're automatically creatures. We don't have to worry about our devotion to turn them on so they become creatures. It reads, Hazoret the Fervent cannot attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. Now, we aren't really about that life. We want to have a lot of cards in hand because of Neyith. The whole reason why we built this deck is because we want to be able to draw cards with our commander and do stuff like this. But it is a 5/4 indestructible with haste that just sits on the table that we can target with our fight effects. It's great. We can also discard cards to deal 2 damage to each opponent for 2 and a red. I think it'll be handy every now and then, like putting it in with Perforos the Bronze Blooded, as a good blocker or something like that. Well, actually, it kind of blocks unless we have 1 or a few. We're reducing the hand size. We might be able to do some niche things. I just really like this card. I think it deserves a spot here. Moving on to our card draw to try and find these bad boys. We've got your standard green card draw package with Sylvan Library and Oran Frostfang and Hunter's Insight. These 3 cards almost go in every green deck when it comes to big beaters. They're fantastic cards. Sylvan Library you need to be careful of, because Sylvan Library you have to pay 4 life for each extra card you draw that turn, or want to keep in your hand that turn, sorry. And we don't have a lot of life gain. We do have some life gain, but I wouldn't be paying 8 every turn to get 2 extra cards. But it is card draw. It is just too efficient to not put in. It's a fantastic card. Oran Frostfang's the same. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Now, giving everything we control Death Touch is fantastic. People already probably don't want to block our stuff, but when we get to draw cards off them dealing combat damage, it's just even better. It's just fantastic. Its stats aren't massive. It's a 2/6 for 5, so it's kind of overcosted for its stat line, but it's sturdy. It's got 6 toughness, so it's not exactly going to be our prized attacker, but it's really good to have on a table if we do have one out. Hunter's Insight. There's a way to capitalize off hitting people with big creatures. It says choose target creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. So like before when I was saying, if you do find yourself lucky enough to be in a situation where you have Xenagos and Neyith out and you do deal that 20 damage, you can draw 20 cards for 3 mana. Seems fantastic. Absolutely busted. That is, with the stars aligned, it won't happen every time, but it's just a really solid card to have. Even drawing 3 or 4, is pretty damn good for 3 mana. Our other 3 card draw cards are Infiltration Lens, Okame Adversary, and Galia of the Endless Dance. Infiltration Lens is our artifact equipment. It says whenever a equipped creature becomes blocked by a creature, you draw 2 cards. We can force our creatures to be blocked with our commander, and it's a very cheap sort of equipment. It's 1 to cast, 1 to equip, so it's just 2 mana, and drawing 2 cards off of that sort of price tag is pretty good. So we like to put this on creatures that we, because we have our gods are indestructible, we put it on gods and we can just keep drawing no matter what they block with. It's probably not big enough or can get around indestructible. So it's pretty reliable. It's quite good. Okame Adversary is a fantastic little card. It says it's 3 and a green with 2/3. It's also an elf, which contributes to our Priest of Titania. But it says, this spell costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a green permanent. Doesn't have to be a creature, just has to be permanent. So it's essentially 2 mana most of the time, I'd like to say. Pretty much 2 mana. It has Death Touch on a 2/3 body, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. People don't want to block Death Touches, they're most likely going to let it through. You get this down turn 2, people are just starting to cast their commanders, they're not going to want to block it. Happy days. You get cards. We've also got Galia of the Endless Dance. It is a 2/2 for green and a red with haste. It's a Lord for Satyrs, but that's not really too important in the deck. And whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may discard a card at random. If you do, draw 2 cards. Pretty self-explanatory. We want to kind of put this down after we've assembled a little table if we're running low on threats to draw extra cards. So it's really good. Fight effects, which is where our deck really shines. We kind of want to be removing threats and pressuring people at the same time. So the fight effect cards are really good with Neyith because she refills our hand when we use them. So the essentially removal. And we have 10 of these fight cards. We have Ravager Worm as our high-end fight card, our most costly fight card. The reason why I've put this card in the deck is because it comes in and it can either fight. It says Riot. Whenever Ravager Worm enters the battlefield, choose up to 1. Ravager Worm fights target creature you don't control, or destroy target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. So this can get rid of our enemies' Cabal Coffers, Dark Depths, all that sort of stuff. So it's really, it's a good utility creature. It is a bit overcosted. 6 mana is quite high for a 4/5, but you know, we can make that stat line a bit better with our deck anyways. An absolute all-star in the deck is Ulvenwald Tracker. Ulvenwald Tracker is a 1 mana little 1/1. It says 1 and a green, tap it, target creature you control fights another target creature. It's a repeatable fight on a 1-drop. You can't ask for a much better 1-drop really. So that's our 2 kind of creature focused fight effects. Ulvenwald Tracker and Ravager Worm. We have moving on to our spells for them. We have Citizen Tactics, Ram Through, Prey Upon, Pounce, and Pit Fight. All of our fight spells. The reason why we have Prey Upon in here is because it's a sorcery speed. I've primarily focused on instant speed interaction when it comes to fight spells, but it's just 1 mana for Prey Upon, and it's too cheap, it's too efficient to give up. It's just a 1 green, this fights that, happy days. The rest of them are all 2 mana, 1 and a green or 1 and a green/red hybrid mana for Pit Fight. So yeah, Prey Upon, Pounce, and Pit Fight, they all just instant speed, 2 mana, this fights that, and it's great. It's really good. We can use it on our opponents to turn, you know, to try and stop them with their commanders or whatever they're trying to achieve. So it's essentially removal. It's really good. I've also put in Citizen Tactics, which is the one we should probably go over the most because it's the best. With Neyith, no matter how many times a creature, say we have 5 creatures and they all fight 5 other creatures at once, that doesn't stack with Neyith. We do not draw 5 cards. That is 1 instance of a fight effect. They all happen at the same time. But with Citizen Tactics, it's different because Citizen Tactics reads instant for 1 and a green with Strive. This spell costs green more to cast for each target beyond the first. And it says until end of turn, any number of target creatures get +1/+1 and gain tap. This creature fights another target creature. But because we can stagger it so that we can just tap, fight, and then that resolves, and then the next one happens, tap, fight, that resolves, and the next one happens, tap, fight, that one happens. We can draw a lot of cards if we have a lot of creatures. So it's good like that, and it's probably the one you want to be digging for more so than the rest. We also have 2 planeswalkers. We have both Domris, Domri Raid and Domri Anarchabolas, because they both have a down tick that lets us fight. Domri Anarchabolas gives us a little bit of counter spell protection as well, because we can uptick ramp, and that creatures you cast this turn cannot be countered, so that's super good. It's also a slight lord. Domri Raid lets us find creatures with an uptick. It says look at the top card of your library. If that's a creature card, you may reveal it and put it to your hand. And it's down to is obviously fight. It's also got an ultimate. It's you get an emblem. Creatures you control have double strike, trample, haste, and wait, sorry, what? You get an emblem with creatures you control have double strike, trample, hexproof, and haste. Yeah, so I doubt we're going to pull that off, but if we do, it's, you know, that's fantastic. That's perfect. One other little fight card we should mention is Arena. It is a land. It says 3 tap, target creature you control. Tap target creature you control and target creature an opponent's choice they control. Those creatures fight. So we get to tap down their creature. Both creatures that are tapped fight each other. It's a land that doesn't tap for mana. This is its only ability, so we have to include that when we're thinking about mana bases. So it doesn't actually tap for mana, but it does let us basically fight. Moving on to the next topic, we should probably go off our utility cards. Our utility cards are, well, I'll start from Shadow Spear, because Shadow Spear is a big one. Shadow Spear is a Theros card that costs 1. It's legendary. It says equipped creature gets +1/+1 trample and lifelink. Both of those things we want. They're perfect. But its big plus side is its ability. It says 1 mana. Permanents your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. That's huge for us because we need to be able to target things to fight, or, you know, do all of our combat tricks and sneaky stuff. And we don't want them having indestructible, because when we have indestructible and they have indestructible, they just bounce off each other. And although that's good in some situations, if we have a lot of fight cards in our hand and we draw more cards than them off of it, it's not good if we're forcing our cards to be blocked with our commander, where they just have an indestructible where they can chump with forever. So that's really not good. So it's good, a really good utility there for the deck. Our kind of like utility protection cards. So we've got like Nature's Claim, Veil of Sunbar, Red Elemental Blast. These are kind of like our Veil and Red Elemental Blast, our control matchup protection or removal protection, if you will. They're just absolutely must-haves in most of these sort of decks, because otherwise getting blown out by casting your commander is a real feels bad. So both of these really help to resolve those sort of issues. Veil of Summer lets us draw a card if they do it as well, which is just perfect. Nature's Claim is super cheap enchantment removal, which is always welcome. We have Force of Vigor as well. Force of Vigor is basically exile a card from your hand when it's not your turn, and you can destroy up to 2 artifacts that are enchantments. If we're getting locked down by pillow fort sort of stuff, we're not a fan, so we want to be able to answer that really efficiently. We also have Cindervines as part of our enchantment Sweet Hate. Cindervines kind of protects us from stormish decks as well, because when they start going off, they're taking a damage for every spell they cast, and we can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy a enchantment. So it's really good. Or it's also an artifact actually. We've also got some protection with Deflecting Swat. Deflecting Swat is a new commander card. It says if you control your commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. You may choose new targets for a target spell or ability. This card here is fantastic. Its utility knows no bounds. It's just super useful in a lot of situations. Absolutely recommend picking up one if you can. Another enchantment card where I forgot to mention is Reclamation Sage. We've got a Rec Sage in here because all green decks need a Rec Sage. Fantastic card. Other protection spells is Heroic Intervention and Darksteel Plate. They are both fantastic. Both give our creatures indestructible. Heroic Intervention is more of like a sweeper protection, as opposed to Darksteel Plate being something that we want to put down on the table and put on our big payoff creatures to just force the issue, because making them indestructible and fighting and all that sort of good stuff is the theme of the deck. We've got a little bit of recursion between Regrowth and Eternal Witness. Both of those bring cards back from our graveyard, which can be pretty vital when people take away key pieces that we need, or if we're struggling to have our devotion on all the time, then these bring back certain cards. Eternal Witness itself has got 2 green pips, so it's great for devotion. We've also got Scavenging Ooze for a little bit of graveyard hate. So kind of need that. And Bow of Nylea. Bow of Nylea isn't really graveyard hate, but she hates on flyers. Deals 2 damage to flyers and gains this life, and returns cards from our graveyard to our deck. you know, it's got its uses. It's quite good. It's also got the passive ability of giving attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. Death Touch, as we've been through, is really good. Payoff cards, we're kind of looking at big beaters. So we've got Vorinclex, Ruikthar, and Nature's Will. These are our three cards that we kind of want to be, you know, if we have these three on the table, we're set up for a good time. Nature's Will is a weird enchantment. It reads, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, tap all lands that player controls and untap all your lands. Or all lands you control, sorry. So this with Trample and Beaters is really, really good. We can tap down problematic people that are going to try and interact with us on our turn. So they basically have to interact with combat or never. So if they interact with our combat, then our second main is free and we get to untap and all this good stuff. So it's really good against that. With Vorinclex is the same sort of thing. It keeps people tapped down. So it's really punishing for people that try and do big spells, and we don't want people to get away with big spells because we want our spells to be the biggest on the table on creatures and stuff like that. Vorinclex is pretty oppressive, but it's super strong, so got to include it. Ruikthar is kind of like it's kind of just like a nod to control matchups where we want to try and slap this dude down early so that people are taking a lot of damage if they're trying to interact with us too heavily. And it's just really out there to punish that sort of stuff. That's pretty much it for the utility and payoffs. We've got a couple of tutors to find the payoffs and that sort of stuff. We have Gamble, Green Sun Zenith, and Finale of Devastation. Finale and Green Suns find us creatures, obviously. Gamble kind of finds us anything, but we run the risk of losing it because we have to discard it, a card at random. But all three of these are pretty solid little tutors. They'll do fine for in a lot of sort of situations. There's not too much tutors because, like I said before, this isn't going to be a CEDH deck. This is kind of just meant to be a solid deck that you can bring to a lot of tables. Nothing truly busted happening here. But in saying that, we do have two combos. Our two combos are Kiki Jiki and Zealous Constricts. This is a must-have in any mono red sort of competitive lists. It's kind of like the Godo Great Helm, where just a lot of lists run this quick little combo because sometimes you need to finish a game, and this is the best way to do it, most efficient way to do it. So we'll do it this way. Kiki Jiki and Zealous Constricts works in a manner of which Kiki Jiki comes in, makes a copy of Zealous Constricts. Conscripts copy enters, untaps Kiki Jiki. Kiki Jiki taps and makes another copy of Zealous Constricts, and so the loop begins. You get infinite 3/3s with haste, and you can just hit people to death. So that's kind of the game plan there. And our other combo is very dependent on the board state. It's not, and it doesn't win us the game at instant speed, but it's Team of Sabretooth and Dockside Extortionist. We need a minimum of 5 enchantments or artifacts to be on the table for this to be effective. And Team of Sabretooth and Dockside Extortionist work together as in, if you have a Team of Sabretooth out and you play a Dockside Extortionist and there is 5 or more artifacts or enchantments, you make 5 treasures. Then you pay 2 mana with Team of Sabretooth to return Dockside Extortionist to your hand. You pay 1 in the green. And then you cast Dockside Extortionist again using that other 2 treasures, so you've net 1 treasure. And Dockside Extortionist comes in, makes another 5. Right? And then you return it with the 1 in the green ability on Team of Sabretooth, and then you've netted 2 treasures. And you just do this incrementally, getting a treasure every time until you have infinite mana to be able to sink into, you know, I don't know, like Ronus, and make something infinitely large and hit somebody in the face or something like this. Now these are both 2-card combos, and I've put Defense of the Heart in. Defense of the Heart reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart and search your library for up to 2 creature cards to put those cards onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. I've intentionally made these both 2 creature card combos so that Defense of the Heart actually basically says, unless you answer this, we can win, or we can generate infinite mana and stuff like this. It's the only kind of cheese way to do it in the deck. There's not really too much. Like I said, there's only 3 tutors, so we're not actively aiming to pull this off. or every game, and we're trying to win in other ways and other fashions. But Defense of the Heart just makes both of these 2-card combos really easy to achieve if we have to. Moving on to our lands. Our lands is a bunch of fetches. So you got Arrow, Mesa, Bloodstained Maya, Prismatic Vista, I guess you can count as a fetch, but it's not really. Windswept Heath and Wooded Foothills. So you just got a little fetch package to try and find, you know, your stomping grounds and things of the likes, fix your colours and all that sort of good stuff. We have, for our dual colour lands, we have Grove of the Burn Willows, Stomping Ground, Rootbound Crag, and I think that's about it. I mean, we have Command Tower, which taps for both. Oh, and Cinderglade. Cinderglade's important because we can fetch it. So we've got a bunch of dual lands there. A couple of one-off lands we have in is Flamekin Village. Flamekin enters the battlefield unless we reveal an elemental card. It comes in tapped. But for 1 red and tapping it, we can give our creatures haste, or a single target creature haste, which is really good. We have a couple of land hate cards. We have Ghost Quarter, Strip Mind, and Wasteland. Because like Field of the Dead is bad for us because people swamping the board where we can't get through. We don't want to do that. So we want to kind of answer any problematic land cards, which I think should just be valid in most decks these days. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We got 9 mountains, 9 forests, a Gaia's Cradle, and that's pretty much that. Oh, and a Castle Garden Brick helps us ramp into big things in Ancient Tomb. Our 2 ramp lands. We've also got the arena we went through before, but we've been through that. That's pretty much the deck, guys and girls. That's Neyith of the Dire Hunt. You want to smash stuff in the face real hard, real fast, and draw cards whilst doing it. Seems good to me. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech, and I'll see you later. Any sort of suggestions and that sort of stuff, I'll be happy to hear them. I'll put a deck list link in the video at the bottom so people can click on it and find it. And that's about it. On behalf of the board state, I thank you all for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed.